Magnesium cases were used by Porsche from 1968 through 1977. The magnesium cases are extremely light, but with that comes a failure point where they tend to want to warp. One of the biggest things that needs to be done whenever you are doing a magnesium case engine is to line bore the main crankshaft bore. And that is this bore that we can see here. This is where the crankshaft will lay and rotate. There are two ways to deal with this issue. The case can be line bored and an oversized bearing used, so that means the back side of the bearing is going to be thicker than a standard size bearing. Or the preferred method is to have the case closed and honed. What that means is the gasket surface or mating surface of the crankcase is machined to make it perfectly flat, and then the crankcase bore is remeasured or rebored at a standard size. Now if you look closely on this one, you'll see on a couple of the areas you can still see where the machine work hasn't cleaned up the original signs of the crankcase bore. The other big advantage with doing a close and line bore back to standard is now we have also flattened all of the gasket surfaces. This makes for a much better engine job with less chance of leakage. The other advantage of the close and line bore back to standard is availability of main bearings. Oversized backs on the main bearings are getting harder and harder to source, whereas standard back main bearings are a lot easier to obtain. One of the other points you have to remember is the parts that bolt across both engine cases. This is the top breather plate, this is the front intermediate shaft cover. Intermediate shaft cover has big enough holes where it's usually not an issue, but you may have to elongate out some of these holes so they'll go over the studs. The breather plate is always an issue, and you need to elongate these holes so that the breather plate will fit on and tighten down correctly on the engine once the case is reassembled. Another issue with magnesium crankcases are the cylinder bosses. These are the bosses where the cylinder will actually sit against. It is a good idea when you're having the close and hone machine work done to have these resurfaced back to flat. That way you'll ensure that there is no oil leaks between the cylinders and the cylinder base gasket. The other thing that you always have to remember is that you are removing material. The case has been closed, so that means the gasket or mating surfaces have been machined, and these have been machined as well. This means to maintain your original design dimensions of the crankcase and the engine itself, you're going to have to use a thicker spacer between the cylinder and the cylinder block. Usually the machine shop that does the close and hone work for you will mark the crankcase to how much material they have removed. In this particular case, it's usually marked right above cylinder number 2, and this particular case it's 25 thousandths. The machine shop that we use will supply an oversized barrel shim. The barrel shim is designed to replace the copper shim. We'll check the compression ratios before we determine exactly how much more shim we need, but this is where it's going to sit in between the barrel and the case.